Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Scales and Tales, and this is Stretch Pentatonic Scales. And this episode is going to kind of conclude this little trifecta of pentatonic-related lessons that I've created, the power of five, and also the pentatonic connection. And in the power of five, I actually demonstrated some stretch pentatonics, and then immediately had requests to feature, stretch pentatonic scales. And this is honestly something, once again, I've had on the back burner for a while. Definitely really eye-opening, fretboard expanding. And it really does kind of help you, fan out your hand. Definitely gives you some more practice for your pinky. And it's really interesting and inspiring, too, to notice these stretchy pentatonic shapes. So here's an image with 10 legendary guitarists known for using, stretch pentatonic scales. And keep in mind, these are just 10 players. There are hundreds, if not thousands, that I could have included. But here's 10 of my favorite right here. So to get started here, I'm going to basically put this lesson in the key of D minor, the saddest of all keys. And there's really no reason for that. I just decided to use D minor. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to basically show you where some of these stretchy ideas come from around the pentatonic scale. And if we take the box right here, and we're going to basically use that and then combine those notes with the notes from the next, pentatonic position, shape 2. Right there. So we're combining this with this. So here's two images showing those two positions, and then a third image showing this, which is basically the stretch pentatonic. Alright, so if you're with me so far, we took this, combined it with this, and we ended up with this. Right, this big stretchy kind of like combination of pentatonic scales. So that's really interesting, but it also creates these unisons all the way across, like right here, and right here, and right here, and here, and here. So all the way down you have these repeated notes, and you can hear that if you just kind of run it. And that's cool. It's got this blurry kind of unison based sound. But what most players do is they'll basically combine, a few notes from one position and maybe one or two notes from another. Like this, like take the top part, right? The top part of the box, and then the top part of the next shape. And then just kind of visualize that, right? But what you want to do, if you want to get rid of that unison, just play with the top part and just add that G note up on top. That's kind of a Michael Shanker kind of stretch pentatonic concept. That kind of thing. And we're just reaching and stretching to grab that G. And we're really just stretching and reaching for one additional note, that G note. But we can do that all the way through the scale. Think of this, and then that little section from the next position right there. Combine that. And then you can start doing that kind of stretchy, Shankerism. Just keep moving down the scale. You can look at right there, and then look right here. Combine those two shapes, and you can start doing that Shanker shift. That Shanker shift to the higher note. And then just keep going right there and right here. Combine those two, right? And you can start doing that shift. And then finally right here, combined with this, combine that together. You can start doing that little kind of legato shift. So I was originally introduced to stretch pentatonic scales through Eddie Van Halen's music and studying some of his solos and licks and stuff, and I noticed him kind of reaching and stretching, from a pentatonic-based shape, and then he was reaching, for higher notes or maybe tapping, higher notes. And then I got into Vai and Satriani and Eric Johnson and players like that and noticed them using these ideas. And then I got into Paul Gilbert big time, and I started studying, his educational material, his instructional videos and old guitar player, lessons and stuff. And through Paul Gilbert, it definitely opened, a lot of doors using these ideas, different licks and approaches and ways of doing this. So this is definitely a Paul Gilbert approved, string skipping stretch pentatonic idea. And what we're going to do is take basically 3 strings from the box and then 3 strings, from the shape after the box. And we're going to combine them. So from the box, we're doing, notes on the low E, D, and B, 2 notes per string. And then the shape after the box, we're grabbing, those notes. We combine all that together and we have, right? Terrifying, really cool sounding too. We could actually add a tap note. You can add that F way up on top and that really comes to life. Now, as you can see, we're doing this. And we're basically outlining, D minor pentatonic, but we are kind of skipping a few notes as we move through there. As you move up here, we're not grabbing that A. We're actually, skipping straight to C. There we're grabbing that F, and then we're skipping all the way to A right there on the B string. So it is string skipping, it's pentatonic bass, but it's also intervallic, which is what gives it that really cool sound. So there's D minor right there, right? And we can basically create, different versions of that arpeggio. You could run that along the low E string in different keys. You could also move it to an adjacent set of strings and put it right here. And guess what that is? That's G minor now, right? Because now we're grabbing those notes from G minor pentatonic and those notes from G minor pentatonic, the next position, and adding those together to create that G minor shape. Take that, move it up a whole step. There's A minor right there. But there's a 1-4-5 progression in D minor outlined using these stretch, pentatonic scales. All right, last but not least here, we're actually going to venture into some Alan Holdsworth territory, looking at some of this material. And since we're looking at Alan's, kind of output, that also means we're looking at Van Halen too, because Eddie was definitely directly influenced and inspired by Alan Holdsworth, especially for some of these crazy, stretchy ideas. So if we go back to the combined scales like we had earlier in the lesson, this, and I was talking about the unisons and stuff, right? And I was kind of avoiding some of those unisons, but now we're going to put them back in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to avoid the middle notes along that, kind of combined scale formation. So instead of grabbing, that row of middle notes, we're just going to grab the lowest and highest notes along that kind of combined pentatonic shape, like this. Right? Really good exercise for your pinky, big time. But you're just playing with unisons because you're going from G to D and then you're grabbing D to A, right? And then that D is going to go to A and then you're grabbing an A on the G. And then that A down to that F and then grab the F on the D string. And then that F down to that C and then grab C again. And then that C down to G, grab G again. And then we're just ending on that low D down there. And that's definitely a great pinky, kind of workout for helping you, stretch a little bit further. And it's starting to enter some of that bizarre, Holdsworth territory. And keep in mind, early in Holdsworth's career, like back in like Soft Machine and Tempest and Tony Williams and some of that stuff, that's kind of what, Alan was doing, was like performing really stretchy, pentatonic based ideas. And he did definitely venture into other scales and stuff. I mean, as his career continued and he definitely improved, and grew as a musician, he moved away from pentatonics, and then he was definitely in the outer, reaches of music theory and very advanced, applications of this material. But definitely in those early years, especially with Soft Machine, you can actually hear and see Alan playing, some ideas like this. So right there, we could take that super stretchy, unison formation, and we can actually sequence it like this. And that's a huge, challenge for your pinky, big time. It sounds like Buckethead or a weird, like, computer freaking out or something. But right there, it's all on your pinky, big time. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Scales and Tales with Stretch Pentatonic Scales. And definitely this is really eye-opening, interesting area of using some of this material. A lot of players think of pentatonic and blues scales as very simple and primitive and basic. And definitely when you start stretching this stuff out and expanding these ideas, you can see things get really complicated and more advanced in an instant. And, if you start checking out some of those players I mentioned earlier, or maybe investigate other players, there's tons of guitarists out there that use this stuff. Guthrie Govan, there's tons of players. And it's interesting, and it definitely influences other things that you do with other scales, too. You might start looking at, like, Aeolian or Mixolydian or something and trying to find ways to stretch or tap, these additional notes that are in a different position. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Take this ball and run with it. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.